Hi, everyone. This is Congressman Greg Stanton. I think we've had enough time for virtually everyone to join today's call. So let's get started with today's webinar regarding economic stimulus portions of the CARES Act that was recently passed by Congress. I don't need to tell anyone on this call. These are really challenging and difficult times in the United States of America. One of the most difficult times that we have ever faced. And first and foremost, our hearts go out to people who have lost loved ones as a result of this horrific pandemic, the coronavirus. People have lost family members, friends, colleagues. No one in our country has been left not impacted by this horrific pandemic. And of course, we have had to shut our economy down, and that has had devastating impacts on individuals, small business, the entire economy. People are hurting. And we did pass, in Congress so far, 3 important bills directly related to the coronavirus pandemic. And today we're going to talk about a variety of things, but including especially portions of that bill that related to direct financial support to people that have been so negatively impacted by this virus. Every single day, my team in the 9th District and I, we're hearing from folks who are hurting. People are worried about their paychecks and making ends meet. We're having record increasing levels of unemployment. People have lost jobs. Many have had to close their small businesses, and they're in dire need of financial relief. So in a few minutes, we're going to hear from experts who are going to walk us through the economic stimulus portions of the relief packages that we've passed. And we're going to talk about, during these difficult times, tragically and sadly, there are still people who are engaging in inappropriate activities, scam operations, to try to take advantage of people that have received this money. We're going to try to talk to you also about how you can avoid becoming the victim of a scam. Let me first just dive into a little more detail about what we've done in Congress to support the American people during this crisis. At the beginning of March, we did pass an $8.3 billion bill. That really had to deal with the medical side of it, to make sure that we try to provide as much support for supplies for our medical responders, our heroes during this crisis. I, like everyone on this call, am frustrated that we have not been as successful as we need to be to get the equipment, particularly personal protective equipment, into the hands of people that need it, not just our doctors and nurses, but also our police officers and firefighters and emergency responders, and those that are working on the front line in our grocery stores, who we have come to learn are such an essential part of delivering food and providing food security during this time of pandemic. All of them deserve that personal protective equipment. I, as a member of Congress, have been frustrated despite allocating the resources that we have not done everything we can, including full implementation of the Defense Production Act, to make sure our heroes get that personal protective equipment. After we passed that first bill, 2 weeks later, we did pass the Families First Act, and the Families First Act ensured that coronavirus testing would be free to anyone in need, regardless of whether they have insurance. It provided emergency paid sick leave, enhanced emergency unemployment insurance, and it did allocate over $1 billion to expand food assistance programs. And it also provided emergency measures to protect frontline healthcare workers and much, much more. Again, that was the right thing to do, but I'm also frustrated that we have not done nearly as much testing in the United States as would need to be done if we're going to talk about opening up the economy. That's not the discussion of today's webinar, but as a member of Congress, I am paying close attention to the president and other leaders in their discussions about when and how to reopen the economy. And I feel we cannot really reopen the economy unless we have significantly more testing in place. And that's been frustrating as a result of that, of the Family First Act, that a more vigorous testing regimen has not been put into place in the United States of America. And then, of course, the bill that we're going to really talk about today is the CARES Act. That was passed at the end of March, a $2 trillion bill, the largest bill that the United States Congress has ever passed in American history. It gives you a sense of just how serious this pandemic is that we did pass the CARES Act. And by the way, more is coming. One of the provisions of the CARES Act was to immediately send individuals and families direct cash payments to alleviate some of the hardships Americans are facing. And there's been a lot of misinformation in the news media and on social media, et cetera. And there are some bad actors who are trying to cash in on this crisis. So that's why today we have experts from the Internal Revenue Service and the Federal Trade Commission who are going to answer your questions about those direct payments and to address some of the common scams that we're seeing, people trying to take advantage of this horrific pandemic, how you can protect yourself. As a member of Congress, I'm going to keep working and fighting to meet your urgent needs and to make sure we all come out of this as financially secure and stable as possible. This is one of the greatest challenges we face in American history. It's incumbent upon Congress to do all we can to support the people of America, to make sure the people and families of America are protected to the extent possible. We're already working on a fourth stimulus package, and it certainly will include more resources for families in need. Okay, with those introductory comments, I want to welcome all of you to this important webinar. We're going to be covering the facts regarding economic stimulus checks, common scams, and how to protect yourself, and to answer a few important questions that we've received in advance from people on the webinar. Let me introduce you to our experts. First, we have Anabel Márquez. She is a Congressional District Liaison here in Arizona with the IRS Office of Legislative Affairs. So she works with Congress and the community on a regular basis. Second, we have Maricela Segura. She's a director of the Federal Trade Commission's Western Region office in Los Angeles. She'll talk to us about some common scams that we're seeing, sadly, during this pandemic. Thank you both of our experts for joining us this morning. Anabel, can you start us off?
Thank you, Congressman Greg Stanton, for this opportunity to deliver important IRS information. As the Congressman mentioned, my name is Anabel Márquez. I'm the Congressional Liaison for Arizona. I work with Congressman Stanton's office basically to help constituents get answers to any IRS-related questions they may have. I'll start by sharing that the IRS is working as quickly as possible to make sure people get their economic impact payments. In fact, over 80 million Americans already received their economic impact payments in their bank accounts this week. Additional rounds of payments will continue, ultimately helping 150 million Americans. As you may know, there are many things that still need to be smoothed out, and new and updated information is frequently being posted on the IRS website. So I encourage everyone to visit irs.gov/coronavirus for all the latest information. Economic impact payments are being distributed automatically with no action required for most people, and this includes Social Security recipients. So let's go over eligibility requirements. In order to qualify for an economic impact payment, people must have a valid Social Security number. If you're single, you must have had an adjusted gross income of no more than $75,000. People with a married filing jointly status who earned up to $150,000 are eligible. And if you file as head of household, you must have earned up to $112,500 in order to qualify. Folks who receive Social Security benefits or supplemental security income are also eligible, and the same applies to adults who receive non-taxable income. The payment amounts are as follows: $1,200 for single individuals. Married couples who file joint returns receive $1,200 per person for a total of $2,400 per couple. In addition to these amounts, there will be an economic impact payment of $500 for each qualifying child. And for people with incomes above these amounts that I just mentioned, the payment amount will be reduced, and it'll be completely phased out if you're single and made more than $99,000, or if you're married filing jointly and made more than $198,000. So how does the IRS know where to send your payment? As I mentioned earlier, economic impact payments are being distributed automatically with no action required for most people. The economic impact payment amounts a person receives is based on the information, the amounts are based on the information you provided on your 2019 taxes. So for those of you who have not yet filed their 2019 returns, Your 2018 returns are being used to calculate the payment. Payments are then issued to the bank account or address you indicated on that return. The IRS is also working with other agencies to retrieve your information if, for example, you receive Social Security benefits or SSDI benefits. Again, there's nothing you have to do. Your economic impact payment will be issued through the same method you receive those benefits. People who have not filed tax returns in a long time or ever because they're not required to do so, it could be they earn too little or they earn non-taxable income. Those folks can now file a simple information return online. Again, irs.gov. You go to the website /coronavirus. It's the easier webpage to access this tool. It's a new tool called Nonfilers Enter Payment Info Here. By clicking on that, you'll be asked to submit your full name, your current mailing address, email, date of birth, Social Security number, and your bank account information. Again, you can access this tool by visiting irs.gov/coronavirus. We also have, some advice from the Social Security Administration, basically going over, let's see here, some of the information that we discussed. People that receive Social Security benefits, again, they don't have to do anything if they didn't file a return for 2018 or 2019. And they qualify for the benefit and they earned under the threshold, the IRS will again deliver their payments automatically because we're working with the Social Security Administration on that. If you haven't yet received your payment, it will likely arrive at your account in the next few days. For non-filers who entered their information online, those payments should also be issued within a matter of days, and paper checks will be mailed out in early May. So we're only 2 weeks away from May, so that'll be soon. Very important to note, the economic impact payments will be available throughout 2020. So if you don't receive one right away, the IRS will be mailing out letters 2 weeks after issuing an economic impact payment. These letters will confirm that, in fact, your check was deposited or mailed. That letter will also have instructions on how to claim your economic impact payment if you never actually received it. And well, we will continue updating our website with answers to your frequently asked questions, so you make sure to check back frequently. And one more thing, I just want to make sure that we start talking about this, and I know Maricela Segura from the Federal Trade Commission will speak to you more about this, but I just want to remind everyone that the IRS will not call you to request personal or financial information over the phone or by email. The agency will not call you about economic impact payments. Remember, those are being automatically distributed. So once your payment is sent off, again, you'll be getting a letter in the mail confirming that, and there's no need to believe anyone who calls acting like the IRS or asking for personal or financial information. And with that, and to get into more of these scams that may be going around, I'm going to turn it over to Maricela Segura now. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Anabel, and thank you, Congressman Stanton, for inviting me to participate in this webinar. We really appreciate the opportunity to talk to people in your district about scams related to coronavirus, what we're doing about them, and what we can all do to avoid them. To give some context to this issue, to date, the FTC has received over 18,200 reports related to coronavirus or COVID-19, and people have reported losing over $13.4 million related to coronavirus fraud. That is more than double the reports we saw this time last week. Next slide, please. We know that scammers follow headlines. We know this from all the health emergencies and natural disasters that we've had in the past. As things change and headlines change, you can expect to see scammers targeting people to reflect those new headlines as well. So by sharing what you're seeing in your community, you can help everyone else spot these scams too. So we encourage you to report any scams or frauds to us at ftc.gov/complaint. Our complaint, our Consumer Sentinel complaint line will share those complaints with over 800 law enforcement partners throughout the country who also use our complaints to guide their enforcement efforts. So please let us know what you're seeing out there. You can also call us to submit a complaint at 877-FTC-HELP. Next slide, please. So we know scammers are going to follow the money. So by now, we know that the federal government, the IRS, and Congress are making an extraordinary effort to provide some financial assistance to those in need as a result of this crisis. Even before the ink was dry on the CARES Act, scammers had been targeting people with fake relief check schemes, and they're exploiting the uncertainty about these government programs and payments. The first thing in helping people to spot and avoid economic impact payment scams is to cut through the confusion and uncertainty about these issues. So I can't stress enough that you need to go to the reputable sources for these pieces of information. You go to irs.gov/coronavirus, as Anabel mentioned. And also, if you want some Social Security Administration specific information, you can go to ssa.gov/coronavirus. Next slide, please. Now, here's what you need to remember. As Anabel said, if someone calls you out of the blue claiming that they have there's money available from a government agency, and all you have to do is make an upfront payment or provide some personal information or financial information to get that money, hang up the phone. It is a scam. The IRS will not call you about your economic impact payment. The IRS nor anybody in the government nobody's going to ask you to pay to get help. No one should ask you for sensitive information to get this help. What scammers are doing is they're trying to take advantage of the uncertainty. So ignore anyone who calls, emails, texts you out of the blue with offers for help to get money from the government. These are scams. If you receive a check for more than what you're expecting it to be very careful. The government is not going to call you to ask you to give back the overpayment by sending cash or gift cards like iTunes or Google Play gift cards or wiring money. That just will not happen. If you receive a call like this, that is a scam. Only use irs.gov/coronavirus to submit information to the IRS, and never respond to an out of the blue call, text, or email. Next slide, please. In terms of what we're seeing also, it's extremely important that people keep an eye out for these fake treatments and cures. Everything from these miracle cures, vaccine offers, and home test kits that people are getting. They're targeting people who are on Medicare, older adults, claiming that that there's a product or a test kit offered to older adults in need. And in a few minutes, we'll talk about what the FTC and FDA are doing about these fake cures and treatments. The takeaway here is to ignore, again, these out of the blue online and telephone offers for vaccinations, tests, or cures. Help will not come to you in this manner, and if you receive such an offer, it is a scam. So if you see ads with the prevention, treatment, or cure claims for coronavirus, stop. Right now, scammers are hawking these bogus products to prevent, treat, or cure the coronavirus. If there's a medical breakthrough, you're not going to hear about it for the first time from an ad or a sales pitch. But especially if you're on Medicare, you might get calls or emails or see ads that claim to give you special access, testing, or treatments. That's not how Medicare works. They're not going to call you to offer you, quote, special access or put you in line for a test or treatment. Anyone who does call you with such an offer is a scammer. Next slide. As usual, scammers are using emails and texts to try to get your personal information, your money, or to load malware and viruses onto your computer. Here's an example of a fake World Health Organization email that would put malware onto your computer. You see it has a click here for safety measures. We're also seeing that scammers have bought up lots of domain names that include the word coronavirus in them, and they even include misspellings of the word. So if you visit one of these sites, it could put malware onto your device. So here's a tip: don't click on links from sources you don't know. It could download a virus onto your computer or device. Make sure that your anti-malware and antivirus software on your computer is up to date, especially now that many of us are working from home and engaging with our colleagues in that way. Next slide, please. So robocalls, this is always an issue, and now we're seeing that, you know, as more of us are working from home, we might be picking up calls that we wouldn't normally answer because we're getting them from work colleagues and the like. That means we may also be receiving more robocalls. Scammers have been quick to pick up on and get into the coronavirus business, and they are offering fake cures again, preventions and test kits by robocall. These are those automated calls that are pre-recorded, but they're also tailoring their robocall scams. So we have seen some coming from the Social Security Administration, purportedly coming from the Social Security Administration that say it's related to the coronavirus. For example, saying that your Social Security payments are going to be suspended because of the coronavirus issue, unless you provide some personal information. They're also tailoring these calls to talk about your mortgage and student loan payments with relation to coronavirus. Here's what you need to do. Hang up on all robocallers and block that number, and then report the call and the number. If you can get the number, report it to the Federal Trade Commission. We use those numbers and we post them on a daily basis and make them available to telecom companies on a daily basis so that they can block those numbers. These numbers are come up again and again. These scammers can get new 800 numbers. So in blocking them is important. One additional thing to note about these robocalls: don't press any number. Even if the recording says press 1 if you want to be taken off this list, or press 1 to speak to a live operator. Do not do that, because pressing 1 will not get you off the list, will not take you to a live person who's going to help you. What it's going to do is inform the robocaller, the scammer, that it's a live number, and it might lead to more robocalls instead. Next slide, please. And unfortunately, there are charity scams, and charity scammers follow headlines as well. And so whenever there's a natural disaster or health crisis like this, we can all expect to see fake charities as well as fake appeals for money. These might come your way on social media or on crowdfunding sites or in phone calls and emails. So we really urge you to do your homework when it comes to donations. Use the organizations listed at ftc.gov/charity to help you research reputable charities. If someone wants a donation from you in cash or by gift card or by wiring money, don't do it. These are sure signs that it is a scam. Next slide, please. Now, I just want to make a note about misinformation and rumors. I mean, there is just so much information flying around right now. Some of it's good and some of it is not, and it's hard to tell the difference. To try to sort things out, we urge you to think critically about the messages you're seeing. Ask yourself these questions before you act to pass on any message to a friend or a family member. Think about, who is this message from? Do you know them? Do you trust them? Are you sure? Considering all the fake emails and phone numbers we've already talked about, you really need to be sure that you know what the source is. Also, what do they want you to do? What do they want me to do? Do they want me to buy something or provide personal information or download something? Take some kind of action. Oftentimes, if they're urging you to take action, especially if they're urging you to do it very quickly, that's a sure sign of a scam. And then what is the evidence behind the message? There's a lot of misinformation out there about the virus and what can prevent and cure the virus. So do some fact checking from good sources before you pass the message along. You do not want to spread poor information, bad information, and certainly false information. So let these questions steer your next step. And then also, you want to get information from trusted government sources about COVID-19. And you can start by going to usa.gov/coronavirus for information and links to federal, state, and local government agencies and resources. Next slide, please. So in terms of our law enforcement, we're a law enforcement agency, and what we're doing is we're targeting companies that are making claims without scientific proof to back it up. So during this pandemic, our attorneys and investigators are working to find those companies who are breaking the law and stop them. So to date, we've issued 47 warning letters to companies who are making claims about products that allegedly prevent or cure the coronavirus, and giving them 48 hours to say how they're going to address the concerns we raise. And so some of this snake oil is Vital Silver, aromatherapy, different kinds of homeopathic remedies, herbs. Here's some example of companies that have received some of our warning letters. We've issued many others. And we've worked with the FDA to make sure that these claims, these dubious health and cure claims, are removed. And we also watch social media and online marketplaces and complaints to make sure that that not only the companies who received our letters cut it out, but that we're not seeing other bad players. We're happy to report that our 47 warning letters have succeeded in taking down the dubious claims for the companies who received those letters. So I will say your reports matter. If you spot what looks like a suspicious claim about a so-called coronavirus treatment or cure, please tell us about it. Let us know at ftc.gov/complaint or call us at 877-ftc.gov. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Hi, everyone. This is Larry Sandigo. I'm the Director of Outreach for Congressman Greg Stanton. Thank you, Anabel, and thank you, Maricela, for this really important information. Before the webinar, we asked our constituents if they could submit questions that they had. And so I'm going to ask as many as I can, and mostly about the stimulus checks. So, Anabel, I know that you covered this, but can you confirm, are people on disability eligible to receive a check? Anabel?
Yes, the answer is yes, they are, and they should be receiving those checks beginning in early May.
Okay. Will the $1,200 stimulus check be recorded as additional income?
No, the statutory language in the CARES Act legislation establishes that the economic impact payment will not be taxable. As a matter of fact, what it does explain is that it's going to be a refundable credit, which would allow folks who weren't eligible to receive it in 2019 or who hadn't yet filed in 2019 and whose 2018 returns were used to determine eligibility and did not get it as a result, would still have an opportunity to claim it when they file taxes next year.
Okay. And Anabel, as far as you know, can it be recorded as income for the purpose of other federal benefits?
Again, the economic impact payment is not taxable income, so
Okay.
it wouldn't, affect, if taxpayers receive other benefits. This is independent of that, and it's not taxable.
Okay. Another question that we had is, can the check be garnished? And if so, how much and for what reasons?
That's a great question, Larry. And based on the announcements and the CARES Act legislation language, the check can only be offset if there is delinquent child support debt. So for purposes of the CARES Act legislation, in terms of any delinquent debt having to do with federal taxes or state taxes, that would pretty much be off limits, meaning the check couldn't be garnished for anything other than child support payments. Now, there have been some media reports out there that point at other types of debt, but as far as the CARES Act legislation as it relates to federal and state tax debt, it's been established that no offsets would be allowed other than to cover delinquent child support, and the amount would basically be dependent on how much is owed. So it could essentially mean that an entire $1,200 payment is offset if the child support delinquency is $1,200 or more.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a stimulus check even if I'm 3 years behind on filing a return with the IRS?
Yes, absolutely. What the IRS is encouraging folks to do if they haven't yet filed their returns and they have the requirement to do so based on their earnings is to go ahead and file as soon as possible. If they file their tax returns, they could do it online. We have several programs, including Free File, that allows for people to file their taxes online with no cost. But the good news with filing now is that even with the IRS office closures nationwide, folks who electronically file their tax returns are seeing that those tax returns are still being processed within normal times. And if they are owed a refund, those tax refunds are still being issued within the 7 to 21 business days that the agency always promises. So if they haven't yet filed their returns and have the requirement to do so, they should do that in order to be able to then receive the economic impact payment.
Okay. Another constituent asked, I haven't filed my 2019 taxes yet, but my 2018 taxes put me above the adjusted gross income. Would I be eligible for the check if my 2019 income would put me below the required income level?
Yes, and again, we do encourage folks to file their 2019 taxes as soon as possible. I'll take this opportunity to remind everyone that the IRS did extend the tax filing deadline this year to July 15th. So understandably, there are many people that are possibly taking advantage of this extension and haven't yet filed their 2019 returns. So if the IRS wasn't able to locate a 2019 return and pulled up the 2018 return to determine economic impact payment eligibility and noticed that the income threshold was above the eligibility for the 2018 return, what's going to happen is as soon as they file their 2019 return, if they're eligible, they'll receive the economic impact payment. If they're still not eligible in 2019, but because of the financial hardships of the pandemic in 2020, this year they would be eligible, then they can claim that credit, that economic impact payment credit on their taxes next year.
Okay, Anabel, so just to clarify, if I'm a taxpayer that made too much in 2019, but then lost all sources of income, for my 2020 filing, I can still get that tax credit, the stimulus?
Yes, but that won't be determined until you file taxes in 2021. Remember, we filed taxes for the previous year, so next year you'll file your 2020 taxes, and then it'll be determined that based on your earnings in 2020, in this case, the losses would make you eligible for the economic impact payment, and you would receive that economic impact payment on top of any refund that you're owed.
Got it. Now we're moving to family situations. Who receives the children's benefits in a split custody situation?
The IRS can only use the information on the tax return on file. So if there's been a change to marital status since the last filed return, then that would be an issue that has to be sort of figured out and squared away between the two spouses. And, it happens sometimes with the popular earned income tax credit where, sometimes there's a situation where parents have separated or divorced and they're both claiming the children for the economic, for the earned income tax credit. And the question is, well, can the IRS do anything to make sure? Well, usually there is an arrangement that is made in terms of who gets to claim the children. So all we can do is we'll issue the economic impact payment, and anything having to do with, which parent would get the $500. That would be something that, the IRS pretty much has to stay away from. We would encourage them to have that conversation. Now, one thing I will mention is that if they had a joint bank account and when they last filed the return, but because of the separation or divorce, that bank account was closed, the IRS will generate a paper check in the name of both persons on the tax return. So when they receive that check, then both persons would have to go to the bank and figure out how they would divide that stimulus.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I received benefits for someone who recently passed away but had filed their taxes. Does this money have to be returned?
We don't have official guidance on what happens in the event where a person receives benefit for a taxpayer who's deceased. But what the IRS is saying is that basically assets of the decedent belong to the decedent's estate and should be handled by the estate's administrator. So any issues concerning, involving a decedent's filed return or the economic impact payment should be addressed by the legal representative of the decedent's estate. And for that, we have publication 559, but I do expect to have more guidance from the Department of Treasury soon. And once we get more guidance on that, I'll be happy to pass it along to Congressman Stanton's office.
Okay, and then we can pass it along to the constituent who asked that question. Thank you. Another question related to family situations. I had a baby after I've filed my taxes from the last time. How do I claim my newborn for the $500 benefit?
Sure. That goes along with the answer that I shared a while ago. Folks who didn't have a dependent in their last filed tax return that have a dependent now would be able to claim that dependent for purposes of the economic impact payment when they file taxes next year. But for now, there's no such tool or ability for the IRS to go and add an additional 500 economic impact payment for a new qualifying child. So all we can do for now is take the information from the last filed tax return, and next year when they file taxes, they'll be able to claim the new dependent for 2020.
Okay. And another question related to the website. So I see that there is an option for non-filers, enter payment info here, and then another one that's get my payment. Can you clarify which one I should use in what circumstance?
So the non-filer tool is specifically designated for folks who don't generally file a tax return and for whom the IRS doesn't have pretty much, an account, so that we can then pull their banking information or their address to mail that economic impact payment. So that would apply to folks who earn incomes that are below the threshold that's required to file a tax return, or for folks who earn non-taxable income. That's what the non-filer enter your information here tool is for. The get payment tool is for people who want to check the status of their economic impact payment. The get payment tool may also allow folks to enter their bank information. So that would pretty much be what people go and log in and check on to see if their payment has been issued and, when to be expecting it. So that's what the get payment tool is for. That's the difference. One is to enter your information and the other one is to check on your payment.
Okay. We had a constituent say that they tried using the Get My Payment website to track their payment and received a message that the status was not available, but they believe they had entered the correct information. What are some reasons that constituents could receive either an error message or one saying that status was not available?
A simple reason why you may receive a message that says status is not available is because the IRS hasn't quite gotten to your account yet, meaning the economic impact payment is being calculated and hasn't yet been issued. So a lot of folks that haven't filed their returns in 2019, that I would say it's safe to say that those folks that filed taxes in 2019 and asked for a direct deposit for their refunds, those were the fastest and easiest, economic impact payments to sort of start issuing out. So now folks that hadn't yet filed, the IRS is now having to locate the 2018 return. So if they go and check, on the Get My Payment tool to see if their economic impact payment has been issued, they may get that status update saying information unavailable. That only means that we're working on it, so to speak.
Okay, and how often is that information updated?
Yes, thank you. We are asking people to only check once a day because the information is only updated every 24 hours. So no use to, go back and check numerous times during that same 24-hour period, since only once a day do we get updates to have people check again.
Okay. And we've had a couple of folks say that they have not been able to use the website and because the taxpayer assistance centers are closed. They want to know, is there a way of contacting a live person for help?
Well, that's the difficult thing. The agency is establishing a helpline to answer questions having to do with economic impact payments. But because of the measures in place for the protection and safety of taxpayers and IRS employees, our call operator centers are currently closed. So that's why we are asking folks to be patient and to refer to the IRS website. And as soon as we do have a phone line that's up and running with operators able to answer calls, we will be sending that information out, immediately so that people can know where to call if they have questions. We don't yet have that available for taxpayers, though.
Okay. And what do I do if the stimulus check is for less than what I think it should be?
Okay, that's also a very good question. If for some reason you received the wrong amount, the IRS will basically be sending you a letter in the mail, like I mentioned during the presentation, and you should be getting that letter about 15 days after the payment is made. The letter will provide information on the amount of the payment, how the payment was made, and how they can report any failure that to receive the payment. So if they believe they were not given the correct amount, that letter will have instructions on how to claim the right amount.
Okay. And you said people will get that letter about 15 days after they get their payment in the bank?
Correct. So in about 2 weeks, they'll start receiving these letters from the IRS. That's right.
Okay. Maricela, I have a question for you from a constituent who hasn't been able to pay their debts and fears that debt collectors will soon start trying to contact her. What protections exist for someone in this situation?
Yes. Okay. Thank you for asking. Under the CARES Act, I'm not sure what kind of debt this is, but the CARES Act actually includes a provision for deferral of student loan debt payments until September 30th, 2020. So with respect to anything student loan related, what I really want to urge your constituents is to stay away from third parties who are offering to assist that person with their student loan debt. Consumers do not need the help of third parties, and they certainly don't need to pay third parties to deal with their student loan debt. They should be getting their information directly from the Department of Education. With respect to other debts, it's my understanding that many banks and other institutions are trying to help borrowers right now. So I would urge your constituents to contact their creditors directly as opposed to taking these unsolicited calls from debt collectors. Now, it's true debt collectors may be calling, and if they're starting to use aggressive tactics, there's a few things that your constituents should remember. The Fair Debt Collection Practices Act contains protections for them. So, for instance, if someone calls out of the blue asking to collect on a debt and something about the debt doesn't sound right to the consumer, your constituent, they can ask for information on the debt. They can also ask that all communications be in writing. They certainly shouldn't be subject to any kind of threats of lawsuits, jail. If they start receiving really abusive and threatening calls, they should report those actors to us because we enforce the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. So I'll repeat, our complaint line is ftc.gov/complaint, and then they can call 877-FTC-HELP. They should also remember that debt collectors should not be revealing their debts to third parties. Sometimes disreputable collectors will try to shame people into paying by calling their neighbors or their family. that's illegal. So there are protections for folks under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. There is some relief for student loan payments, but I will urge your constituents, for anything student loan related, they should go to the Department of Education. They shouldn't be paying a third party to help them with their student loan debt. Anything debt related, they have protections under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, and if they feel like someone is being abusive or acting illegally, they should submit the complaint to the FTC, ftc.gov/complaint. And above all else, talk to your creditors or your lenders. They may be willing to work with you during this time. Many have said it publicly, and so we anticipate that they'll be able to find some relief just by dealing with their creditors directly.
Thank you. And Maricela, one of the scams that you mentioned earlier, which I'm hoping that you can re-emphasize now, is about people appearing to be friendly neighbors or friends going to the homes of either senior citizens or other vulnerable people and offering to get groceries. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes. And thank you for asking. These are another twist on what we call the imposter scams. People posing as folks offering help. What we've heard, unfortunately, very sadly, is that there are some people that may be going door to door and maybe targeting older adults or folks who can't go out and buy groceries, and they're offering, for $50, I'll go and run your errands or buy your groceries. These are scams. They take your money and they run off. And then also what we're still seeing during this time related to coronavirus, and we've seen before, are what we call the family member or grandparent scams. And these are where scammers will call out of the blue and pretend to be a family member. And sometimes they'll just call an older, if they know that it's a number belonging to an older adult, they'll call the older adult and say, Grandpa, Grandma, I'm, your nephew or niece or grandkid, and I need some help. I just need some money really quick. And they'll try to rush the recipient of the call into action and ask them to either wire money or buy gift cards immediately because they're in dire need. And what we want to tell your constituents is, if you receive a call like that, that is urged, even if you think it's a family member, take a beat, stop. Do not go and send money or provide personal information. First, check it out. If you really do think that you're receiving a call from a family member in need, maybe you hang up the phone, get the number, hang up the phone, and call around to other family members just to check out whether it's true or not. Sometimes even asking the person calling for a callback number so that you can take a few moments to check this out will end the scam right there, because the scammers do not want to give you a callback number. But yeah, we see these personal imposter scams and these fake offers of help coming up, and some of them may just be going door to door and offering to buy groceries. So again, just my one tip is your force field to avoid all of these scams is, if you're receiving a contact out of the blue, you didn't initiate it, and someone's asking you for money or personal information, it's a scam. Do not engage, hang up the phone, and certainly let us know about it by submitting a complaint.
Thank you. Maricela, we had a constituent say that Anabel, had a constituent say that they had tried to access the Get My Payment, and they got a message that says, please try again later. Based off of what you said earlier, it sounds like people may get that message if they check it multiple times within the same 24-hour window. Can you confirm that and expand on that?
Yes, we are really encouraging folks to check once a day. If they get an error message, we do have a frequently asked questions document on irs.gov that goes into a little bit of detail of what certain error messages may mean. But for the most part, you can imagine millions of people are accessing the website trying to get information on their economic impact payment. So it is possible that they may get locked out of the account after numerous attempts. We also know that, Congressman May, this is an app that's only been available for a matter of a couple of days. So there are a few things that may come up. We have identified perhaps a glitch or two, and the IRS is quick to respond and make sure that things are smoothed out. But We just ask that folks check once a day, and if the issue continues, I would encourage your constituent to send an email specifically detailing what the issue is, and I'll be happy to personally look into the issue and see if we have an answer to whatever it is that they're facing when they're trying to access that tool.
Thank you. And just as a reminder to everyone who's participating, is that our office of Congressman Greg Stanton is here to help. And so if you have one of these situations like Anabel just mentioned of repeatedly getting the same error message even after you wait 24 hours, please contact our office and we can get in touch with the IRS for you. And even though we are teleworking, we are still offering full constituent services. For the folks who are joining us, the phone number of the office is 602-956-2463. You can also contact us through our website, which is stanton.house.gov. So unfortunately, we don't have time for more questions, but for the constituents that did submit questions, we will get in touch with you about your question and answer it. Just before we close off, I just wanted to go over quickly again about how key it is to stay informed and what resources are available. So, one place where we are compiling a lot of this information is on Congressman Stanton's website, which again is stanton.house.gov. And there you'll find resources from the IRS, from the FTC. And as new information comes to light, we will be updating it and making sure that folks have access to the latest information. And we've also listed the IRS toll-free number. It's here on the screen, and for individuals, it's 1-800-829-1040. And that toll-free number is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Maricela, I don't know if you want to just one last time go over what are the options available for FTC.
Yes, sure. We have blogs and consumer alerts that let people know on a weekly, sometimes daily basis what the scams are that are arising and how to avoid them. So if you'd like to subscribe to those, they're very interesting and pretty digestible. It's ftc.gov/subscribe. Again, our complaint online of complaint assistance is ftc.gov/complaint, and that's to submit complaints about any topic, including robocalls and debt collection. And then our complaint line is 877 FTC HELP, HELP. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, folks, we're unfortunately out of time, but I just want to give our panelists, ask them one question. If there's one thing that you want us to take away from this, what would it be? And we'll start with you, Anabel, then go to you, Maricela, and then Congressman Stanton will close us out.
Sure thing. Well, I think on behalf of the IRS, I would simply like to remind folks to visit our website, irs.gov. We are facing challenging times. The IRS was handed this incredibly large, assignment, so to speak, this task of issuing payments to American taxpayers, to folks here in this country that need them right now during an already very busy tax season. So because our operations are limited at our offices, we do encourage folks to visit the website, and we're happy to answer questions from your constituents. And I thank you for the opportunity, Congressman and Larry, to address a few points and to answer questions. Thank you.
And for the FTC's part, I've said it before, and I think it's worth repeating. If someone calls you or contacts you in some way out of the blue, asking you to provide them money or personal information in exchange for help, it is a scam. Do not engage with that person. And I want to emphasize, if this is an uninitiated contact, for example, if you're already in communication with your bank, well, you're in communication with your bank. But if this is something out of the blue, coming to you as an offer for help, but you just need to give them a little bit of money or personal information, do not engage. And I guess I would also urge that folks, before you forward some sensational news story or like some sensational story or piece of information, check it out, because there's a lot of misinformation flowing around, and that really does help support harm and scams right now by passing it forward. So thank you for that, for giving me time to talk to your constituents.
Thank you. Congressman Stanton, do you want to close us out?
Thank you very much. Thanks to everyone for taking the time to be on today's call. It was very informative. We find that using these webinars are a great way to provide information to the people that we represent so that they can be armed with as much information as possible as we're going through this terrible time together. And I want to thank you, Larry, for doing a great job with the questions and helping to organize this important webinar. Anabel and Maricela, thank you very much for your expertise. I thought the information you provided was outstanding and very much appreciated. And I want to thank everyone who has participated in today's webinar. We're going to have another webinar coming up Wednesday at 2 p.m. This is for renters and homeowners. These are key issues facing renters during this crisis. And there's a lot of information for you to know also about things that have been in bills passed by Congress that you should be aware of, what your rights are, et cetera. It's very important. Bottom line, if you need help, as Larry mentioned, don't hesitate to contact me or my office. I have a great group of professionals in my office that are dedicated to the people that we represent, and we are there to help. So on the screen, you should be able to see how to get in touch with my office. Although my staff is teleworking, we're still providing full constituent services. In fact, we're busier than ever in terms of the amount of constituent service, and that's a good thing. We're there to provide as much help and support for the people and small businesses and families and churches in my district. We are there to help as much as possible during this time of crisis. That includes assisting folks with help with the IRS, FTC, and the other important federal agencies. Thanks everyone again. Bye now, and we'll see you again Wednesday, 2 p.m. Bye-bye.